Once again, welcome back to episode five. Episode five. Pruning Roses, episode four. I felt it was really important for me to talk about the idea of deadheading. I'm trying to enter that into the business lexicon. So from now on, if I say something in regard to deadheading, hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about. So not just for pruning roses, but for your business as well. In this episode, I'm getting back on track with episode one and episode two when I said I was going to talk about the 30-day project, limiting my time on social media. Well, what I'm going to do in this segment is I'm going to talk about the statistics of how traffic improved or went down. So I have to start with a baseline and I have to so I'll be looking down a lot now, so excuse me for that. But what we're looking at is something like in psychology where you have a control group and an experiment group. I had to have a baseline set up for the website. Okay. And with that baseline, what's going to happen here is I'll be able to tell you what my statistics were when I was just doing what I normally do in my business, every day. And that would include, I wasn't really focused on doing a lot of writing. I wasn't really focused on trying to stimulate traffic. I'm in a unique position, okay? And I'm not trying to validate my knowledge, but this is what I do know. You can read all of these different books. You can look at all of these different seminars. You can sit in front of all of these talking heads, all of these people that will tell you different things about how to grow your traffic on your website, how to build a better business. Well, this is the problem most of the time. No one gives you the numbers or the statistics or let's say the research that they've done themselves in regard to doing this. What they're doing is kind of regurgitating a lot of information that you probably heard before. And you find yourself kind of stuck trying to figure out, how am I going to increase traffic? I am by no means a professional social media person. I don't have a lot of followers on Twitter. I don't have a lot of followers on YouTube. I don't get a whole lot of traffic to my websites. But what validates what I'm saying is I have an extremely successful business in my ARC store. Now, my ARC shoe company, it's not as successful. CBP is not as successful. I don't sell a lot of books. So the strategies that I'm working on, the things that I'm doing, I can take a lot of risk because the ARC store allows me to take risk that most people probably wouldn't take on their business. They wouldn't get rid of a Facebook page. They wouldn't. I had, I guess, about 500 people on my author's Facebook page and I wiped out the page completely just to see what would happen if I could aggregate all of my data into my personal Facebook page. But those are the kind of things that I will attempt that most people probably wouldn't, because I'm not concerned with keeping that traffic. I like interacting with people, but I have to try different things. If I'm going to write about it, I have to try it so I have something to validate what I'm saying. All right. So what we're going to get into on this week one analysis is I needed a baseline. I needed to look at how me limiting my time on social media would affect my websites. So I'm looking at 3 websites. Okay. I'm looking at the ARC online store, which is my sneaker website, which is the big money maker. I'm looking at ARC, my shoe company website. And I'm looking at CBP, which is the publishing company and the blog that has the business information and the food reviews and book reviews and film reviews. CBP and ARC, my shoe company, are not big businesses. They don't have a lot of traffic. But what I can do is look at the statistics based on what I'm doing now. So I limited myself to these 30 minutes a day. All right. And I had to get a baseline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and forth now between the webcam and I'm going to do some voiceover. So I'll have my headphones on when I come back probably. But hopefully you guys are taking notes, because it's going to be a lot of information here, because the baseline information is going to be in regard to page views, unique visits, first-time visits, and returning visits. So these are the different things I'm going to look at. I use a program called Stat Counter. Most people use Google Analytics. Stat Counter gives me a nice little printout the same way that Google Analytics does. You can use either one. They're both valuable. But I'll be looking at page views, unique visits, first time visits, and returning visits. In regard to how the traffic is getting to the website, I'll be looking at um, direct traffic, referring websites, social networks, and search engine referrals. So what you'll have are a lot of charts. You won't be able to see those small numbers unless you blow the video up on your screen, and it'll still be hard to see it. But I'll go back in and put some I'll put some captions in so you'll know what I'm saying. Um, but let's get to it. Like I said, this one's going to be a little bit more detailed than the last messages, the last few videos were, and that's what it's all about. We're trying to get to the core of figuring out what happens if you limit your time on social media. That's what I worked on the last 30 days, and that's what we're going to get into. So let me throw these headphones on and do a voiceover so you can look at the statistics. Be right back. So real quick, these screenshots are not going to stay up very long and they're not very clear, so you can't see all the detail inside of them. But once again, remember I'm looking at page views, unique visits, first time visits, and returning visits. On the chart that you see the graph bars, the second chart where you see the circle, that's going to be looking at direct traffic, referring websites and social networks, and also search engine referrals. Um, so once I get into this and I start analyzing, what you'll see is these different charts, and I'm going to try to explain them as quickly as possible. And I'll go back and put captions in so you can see what I'm saying as far as the numbers. But first, I'm going to give you the baseline numbers. All right. So for the ARC website, which is my shoe company, the baseline numbers for that first week were 224, 224 page views, 115 unique visits, 110 first time visits, and 5 returning visits. For the following week, which was the end of week 1 of limited social media, my numbers went down on ARC. It went from 224 to 196 to 102 on unique visits, 89 on first time visits, and actually the returning visits went up to 13. So I had a bit of an increase there. All right, on the second charts that you'll see, it's for the ARC Online Store. The ARC Online Store was 336 page views for the baseline week, 237 unique visits, first time visits were 217, and returning visits were 20. Week 1, at the end of the first week of limited social media, it was 319 page views, which is not that much of a drop off, 200 unique visits, which is lower, 172 first time visits, and 28 returning visits. So I had, once again, I had an increase in returning visits for the first week of being limited to social media. Now, CB Publishing, which is the last set of pictures, is CBP. The page views were 252. Unique visits were 201. First time visits were 180. And returning visits were 21. And this is the baseline for CBP. Now listen to these numbers for week 1 after the first week of limited social media. Page views 754. Unique visits 655. First time visits 629. Returning visits 26. Every number for CB Publishing was greater. So something really interesting happened at that point, and that's what I want to talk about, and I'll get back into that once I get off of this voiceover. So give me a few seconds to switch back over, and we'll come back to that. All right. I hope you guys are still with me. That was a lot of information. I know it was a lot of information. Um, no way around it. You needed to see the numbers, but I know it was kind of confusing. I fully expect someone to either email me or leave a comment or write something asking questions about what all of those numbers were. But the most important one, like I said, was in regard to CBP, where I saw basically a 5 time increase in traffic on the website. So you have to ask yourself, why is it that the two websites, ARC, my shoe company, and ARC, the online store, the traffic stayed basically the same? You had a small decrease in traffic, and it stayed basically the same since I wasn't on social media so much. But CBP, which is a information-based website, has the reviews and business information and all of these articles that I've been writing for a really long time, just building up content. CBP had this explosion in traffic. Well, you're going to see something in the next video that I do in the next episode. I'm going to talk about week 1 versus week 2, and there's going to be a huge drop off until the last day. So what happened during week 1 was I wrote an article probably 4 months ago. And this gets back to the point of being someone who, even if no one's coming to your website, you consistently produce content. You just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. Well, on CBP, I've been writing for years. So there's over 300 pages of content inside of CBP. Well, I wrote an article about Shark Tank, and I don't know what happened. I guess they re-aired the episode, and I had written this article months ago. And then right when I stopped, I limited my use of social media. I guess the re-airing of this one Shark Tank show, and I wrote an article called "Of Lipstick and Cockroaches" about the Lip Bar. Go check out those ladies too. www.thelipbar.com. They were pitching to the Sharks, and Kevin O'Leary, in his usual arrogance, he called the sisters on there colorful cockroaches. And immediately I knew in my head, I was like, man, somebody's going to think that was racist who never watches the show. So I wrote that article months ago. And out of the blue, I had these ridiculous spikes in traffic. So what happened was I wasn't sharing anything to Facebook necessarily or to Twitter. The increase in traffic was in the search engine. So when I say that I need to give you how people got to the site, and I'm using direct traffic, referring websites, social networks, and search engine referrals. On CBP, the week prior, the baseline, direct traffic was 41%, referring websites was 11%, social networks 19%, search engine referrals 29%. Well, after that show aired, and I had the good fortune of being prepared and having written an article, and nobody else had written an article about the fact that he called these women cockroaches. And he had already called some white women cockroaches as well. But this is what happened the following week. Direct traffic, 25%. Referring websites, 11%. Social networks, 8%. I had a big drop down in social networks. And then search engine referrals shot through the roof, 57%. So people were finding the information through Google, which means if you create meta tags, keywords, whatever, descriptions for your articles when you're blogging, people will find your content if it matches the search that they're looking for. So the real big point that I want you to take away from this week, even though there's a lot of numbers, and I don't apologize for that. It's part of what we have to do. Things are going to get a lot more detailed. Episodes are going to get a little bit longer. I'm going to have to split them up probably. But what I want you guys to take away from this is that the most important thing that you can do as a small business person is to create content for your website. I don't care who you are, what you're trying to do. Create content for your website. Even if people aren't going, I don't have a whole lot of people going to the site. But if people go and they take the time to browse on the website, they're going to find a ton of different information. And that's critical. That's what will help you to get over, and that will possibly keep people coming back to your website. So that's the end of episode 5. Made it through. If you guys stuck with me this whole way, I appreciate it. Share it. Start deadheading your businesses. Go in, prune some things, make things sharper, and let's build these businesses and make things happen together. If you want to talk about certain things, then you can write me and I'll try and get those questions in or those comments in. But as of right now, what I'll do in the next episode is I'll talk about week 1 versus week 2. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Thank you for your time. And all new subscribers, thank you. I really am excited about the fact that you guys are signing up. I'll talk to you next episode.